We're on chapter 29.
We're on chapter 29. Before we get started in chapter 29, I'd like to do another little follow-up. Barbara, you were mentioned in my sermon. Not by
Not by name, not by name.
Not by name.
Way to go.
It's God, not me.
I said, we've got a woman in our Bible study who goes to one of those kind of fundamentalist type churches. And
The Grace Episcopal at Denmark.
yeah. And she had talked about the pre-incarnate Jesus appearing. And the lesson, as I said last time we met, the lesson Paul talked about the pre-incarnate Jesus when he talked about the rock where they got their water. And Paul even says the rock was Jesus. And I had a lot of people, and I said, I can't believe I'm 53 years into ministry and have never really thought about the pre-incarnate Jesus. I said, but John's gospel says in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Mm-hmm. So John's gospel tells us that Jesus was with God at the beginning. So why wouldn't he be with the Israelites when they're on that journey? Why wouldn't a pre-incarnate Jesus show up as a messenger from God? And I said, we don't stop talking about Jesus after the resurrection. We still see Jesus as present with God. So I appreciate you kind of opening my eyes.
Didn't mean to.
It worked.
Sometimes that's the best way to do it. When you don't know what you're doing.
We kind of, at least in my case, there was no Jesus before his birth. I mean, that's kind of our mindset.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, they must have had a committee up there and decided, hey, we need to send the way down or something,
Yeah.
and realizing, and when Barbara mentioned that, I thought, and then I got to thinking, and then you mentioned it a couple times later, and then in your sermon, yeah, that really, that was good input.
And a lot of people have either sent me an email or came up to me after the service and said, we'd never really thought of that.
I spent the whole week wondering if that was the correct view. And so I was trying to view it as you had.
Well,
I never concluded anything. But
You convinced us, though.
Barbara,
that's exciting.
you're not going to get us to speak in tongues.
Oh, well, I wouldn't do that either.
But it really,
That's a whole nother thing.
Yeah.
Go to a different church for that.
but it really was an eye-opener, I think,
Wow.
for a lot of people, because we don't talk about the pre-incarnate Jesus. We make such a big deal out of the nativity, with Christmas trees and reindeers and Santa Claus and a stable and camels and shepherds and a big star, that we forget that Jesus was with God at the beginning. He was there.
Mm-hmm.
And so, thank you.
Well, you're welcome.
I can hardly wait till your next Trinity Sunday
Yeah.
explanation of the Trinity again.
Yeah.
I know you love that one.
Yeah, I'm kind of hoping I get, usually clergy, that's the last Sunday people want to preach on. But, I'm kind of thinking, turn me loose on Trinity because, it's, so anyway, it is, it's an eye-opener. So we're on 27?
29.
29. Flip over one more. And this is all Yahweh's stuff now, and all the way through 29. Ready to go? Yep.
Then Jacob went on his journey and came to the land of the sons of the east. He looked and saw a well in the field, and behold, 3 flocks of sheep were lying there beside it. For from that well they watered the flocks. Now the stone on the mouth of the well was large. When all the flocks were gathered there, they would then roll the stone from the mouth of the well and water the sheep and put the stone back in its place on the mouth of the well. Jacob said to them, "My brothers, where are you from?" And they said, "We are from Haran." He said to them, "Do you know Laban,
Yeah, Laban.
Laban, the son of Nahor?" Is that close?
Yeah.
And they said, "We know him." And he said to them, "Is it well with him?" And they said, "It is well. Here is Rachel." Hang on a minute. There we go. His daughter coming with the sheep. He said, "Behold, it is still high day. It is not time for the livestock to be gathered. Water the sheep and go pasture them." But they said, "We cannot until all the flocks are gathered." And they rolled the stone from the mouth of the well. Then we water the sheep. While he was still speaking with them, Rachel came with her father's sheep, for she was a shepherdess.
Shepherdess.
Okay, shepherdess.
Mm-hmm.
Well, she was a sheepherder too. We're gonna have her be in both.
10.
When Jacob saw Rachel, the daughter of Laban, his mother's brother, the sheep of Laban, his mother's brother, Jacob went up and rolled the stone from the mouth of the well and watered the flock of Laban, his mother's brother. Then Jacob kissed Rachel and lifted his voice and wept. Jacob told Rachel that he was a relative of her father and that he was Rebekah's son. And she ran and told her father. So when Laban heard the news of Jacob, his sister's son, he ran to meet him and embraced him and kissed him and brought him to his house. Then he related to Laban all the things. Laban said to him, "Surely you are my bone and my flesh," and he stayed with him a month. Then Laban said to Jacob, "Because you are my relative, shouldn't you therefore serve me for nothing? Tell me, what shall your wages be?" Now Laban had 2 daughters. The name of the older was Leah, and the name of the younger was Rachel. And Leah's eyes were weak, but Rachel was beautiful of form and face. Now Jacob loved Rachel, so he said, "I will serve you 7 years for your younger daughter Rachel." Laban said, "It is better that I give her to you than to give her to another man. Stay with me." So Jacob served 7 years for Rachel, and they seemed to him but a few days, because of his love for her. Then Jacob said to Laban, "Give me my wife, for my time is completed, that I may go in to her." Laban gathered all the men of the place and made a feast. Now in the evening he took his daughter Leah and brought her to him, and Jacob went in to her. Laban also gave his maid, how do you pronounce that one?
Zilpah.
Zilpah, to his daughter Leah as a maid. So it came about in the morning that, behold, it was Leah. And he said to Laban, "What is this you have done to me? Was it not for Rachel that I served with you? Why then have you deceived me?" But Laban said, "It is not the practice in our place to marry off the younger before the firstborn. Complete the week of this one, and we will give you the other also for the service which you shall serve with me for another 7 years."
Let's pause there for a minute.
Okay.
Well, I'll tell you, these daughters really get mistreated. When this chapter starts off, there at about verse 5 or verse 4, Jacob said, "Hello, friends, where are you from?" And they said, "We're from Haran." And Jacob asked, "Do you know Laban, son of Nabor?" Isn't that like the world today? You know, you go somewhere. I remember I was in Ireland, and I was talking to some guys outside a pub, and they said, "Where are you from?" I said, "I'm from the United States." And they said, "Oh, we know you're American." He said, "But what state are you from? We studied geography in Ireland." And I said, "I'm from Kansas." "Well, do you have a city?" I said, "From Hutchinson, Kansas." "You know Bill James?" Who apparently was from Galway, and he moved over here, and his first move was to Hutchinson. But you know, how many times have you been asked, or have you asked somebody when you know they say they're from someplace? Somebody says, "Well, do you know?"
So and so.
You know, they kind of think we live in a very small town, a very small city. So, you know, here Jacob is saying, you know, we're from Haran, and he says to them, "You know Laban?" You know, those poor people must have thought, who in a, you know, asking a question like that. So Jacob works out a deal. Rachel's the hot one, and Jacob wants to marry Rachel. And then around 21, then Jacob said to Laban, "Give me my wife. I've completed what we agreed I'll do. I'm ready to consummate my marriage." That's not what your translation says. And I'm not sure
Then
what.
I may go into her.
Yeah.
There's a euphemism for the same thing.
Yes. And so.
And that's what in those days made the marriage,
Right.
the consummation.
So, yes, well, that historically has always, I mean, when a king marries someone, the archbishop stands by the bedside to make sure they consummate the marriage, because it's not legit until the king has gone into it. So now, this guy, he must have been blind drunk, because they send Leah into the marriage bed, and Jacob slept with her. And in the morning, he wakes up. What?
Not the right one.
What's happening here? I'll tell you a funny story. I don't know if I've told you this before or not. I had a friend back in Flint, Michigan, who was a lawyer. And he was cheating on his wife. His wife was not happy about this. But she knew that after they did the deed, he always fell asleep. So he was gone for the evening. He going to a conference out of town. And she drove around until she found the motel they were staying at. Like a fool, he parked his car right out front of the room. She went to the desk and she said, you know, "I'm Mrs. So-and-so." She said, "We need another room key." So she waits until they've taken care of business. She puts the room key in the door, goes in the room, and she says to the other woman, "Shh, get up, get dressed, and get out of here." The wife takes off her clothes and gets in bed with the husband. In the morning, the husband wakes up looks over and he sees his wife, not his girlfriend, and he says, "Where am I? What happened?" You know, trying to act like, I don't know what's going on. They were divorced shortly after that. But I thought, you know, that's a creative woman to think of pulling that stunt. So,
I thought you were going to tell me she beat the snot out of him.
no, this was even worse because he was caught red-handed, and you know, it was kind of tough if you're married to a lawyer and they want to get a divorce, it's kind of hard because all his lawyer friends are reluctant to represent you. He agreed on the spot to give her what she wanted. So anyway, I always thought that was a funny story. I mean, I can just picture this guy waking up and going, "Where am I? What's going on?"
What happened?
Yeah. So
Oh.
anyway, so
About Leah going into Jacob, the scripture says, but in the evening. And then my footnote says, it was dark or nearly dark when Leah was introduced to Jacob for the consummation of their marriage. And darkness in a world without artificial lightning can be pitch black. At this stage, Jacob did not realize that Leah was the bride. She may also have come to him wearing a veil, the sign of a betrothed woman. So in the dark, in a tent, there's no light.
yeah. But I didn't say earlier that Leah and Rachel, one was taller than the other.
No, it said Leah has
Bad eye.
delicate eyes. There's
Well,
been a lot of controversy over what that
yeah.
word really is in the scripture.
Well, here we've got a father then saying, "Well, you're married to this woman, to my daughter." And then I think you said a week after, enjoy, the message says, "Enjoy your week of honeymoon. Then we'll give you the other one also, but it'll cost you another 7 years of work." I'm not sure I would trust the dude at that point.
Yeah.
Well, Jacob saw through him eventually and turned the tables on him.
Yeah. So, anyway, let's go on from, what are you, 28?
Uh,
Yeah, that's right, where we left off, 28.
yeah.
Okay. Jacob did so and completed her week, and he gave him his daughter Rachel as his wife. Laban also gave his maid Bilhah to his daughter Rachel as her maid. So Jacob went in to Rachel also, and indeed he loved Rachel more than Leah, and he served with Laban for another 7 years. Now the Lord saw that Leah was unloved, and he opened her womb, but Rachel was barren. Leah conceived and bore a son and named him
Reuben,
Reuben.
like in the sandwich.
Okay. For she said, because the Lord has seen my affliction, surely now my husband will love me. Then she conceived again and bore a son and said, because the Lord has heard that I am unloved, he has therefore given me this son also. So she named him Simon.
Simeon.
Simeon?
There's an E-O in the Simeon.
Okay, Simeon. I'd have called him Simon, but Simeon.
It's a different spelling.
Okay,
Okay, she conceived again and bore a son and said, now this time my husband will become attached to me because I have borne him 3 sons. Therefore, he was named Levi. And she conceived, boy, she's a busy lady.
Yeah,
Sounds like she was loved.
yeah. For being the least good looking, apparently Jacob couldn't deny her.
And she's having all boys too.
Yeah,
And she conceived again and bore a son and said, "This time I will praise the Lord." Therefore she named him Judah. Then she stopped bearing.
okay. Now, the Message gives us translations of, she named the first one Reuben, and it says, "Look, it is a boy." I don't know if Reuben means, "Look, it's a boy." And then she got pregnant again. She had another son. She named this one Simeon. God heard. And she became pregnant yet again and had another son. And she said, "Now maybe my husband will connect with me." I think he's connected with her a few times.
At least 4.
Yeah,
Where hers was saying, oh, verse 31. Mine has that Leah was hated stronger than hers.
Well, mine says she was in love.
Yeah, mine says hated.
Wait,
yeah,
That's harder.
that's worse than being unloved.
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So when God realized that Leah was unloved, the Message says unloved.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you, if Jacob hated her, he sure couldn't keep his hands off her.
Well, he sure couldn't keep something off of
Then
her.
the third son, she named him Levi, which means connect, and she became pregnant a final time and had a fourth son, and she said, "This time I'll praise God." So she named him Judah, which means praise God. Then she stopped having children. If you want to build a case for a Jewish man to find a good woman, here's a woman who had 4 boys. I mean, and that of course, having boys was always better for Jews, especially the firstborn son. Now, have you noticed there's kind of a pattern here with having children? Who was Jacob's brother? Esau. 2 boys. No mention of a girl. These people, and as the Yahweh is telling in the story, he's really emphasizing that these women are having boys. Now, it could be, and there's no reason to think this, but it would be possible that Leah had a couple girls, but they're not mentioned because women are discriminated against in the Old Testament.
Sometimes in the genealogy it will add, and he had daughters.
Yes.
Without naming.
Yeah, at the end, they stick it in.
Or saying how many.
Yes.
It just says, and daughter, and he had daughters.
Yes.
One daughter gets named, Judah's daughter Tamar.
Yes. But she was the firstborn, wasn't she?
No, she was the one that married. No, she wasn't Judah's daughter. She was somebody else's daughter. Anyway, she married 2 guys, 2 brothers. One of them died, married the next one, he died. The third one was too young to marry, and so the father said, wait till he's grown up. Well, she got tired of waiting and realized he was never going to give him to her.
Yeah.
So she tricked him into thinking she was a harlot and got pregnant by him.
By the father
Of the boys,
of
yes.
the boys. Yeah.
And then he said she was more righteous than he is.
Mm-hmm. When he found out that he was the father of this kid.
Yeah. But you see, we're always talking about boys being born,
Mm-hmm.
but who's the focus in all of those? In this one, it's Leah.
Mm-hmm.
It's always the mother that's the focus.
Yes.
Isaac and Jacob.
Yep. And Jacob and Esau. I
And
mean,
Abraham and Isaac, he had another son by Hagar,
right,
but again, sons.
right. But the woman is always named who has the boys.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're popping out boys, you'll get your name in the Bible.
Well, she did it. I think she'd just have them and then she'd be on the next one.
Well, let's get into chapter 30,
Okay.
because that's interesting, because now we're going to find out what Rachel says, because she isn't happy.
Now, when Rachel saw that she bore Jacob no children, she became jealous of her sister, and she said to Jacob, "Give me children, or else I die." Then Jacob's anger burned against Rachel, and he said, "Am I in place of God, who has withheld from you the fruit of the womb?" She said, "Here is my maid, Bilhah. Go in to her, that she may bear on my knees, that through her I too may have children." So she gave him her maid, Bilhah, as a wife, and Jacob went into her. Bilhah conceived and bore Jacob a son. Then Rachel said, "God has vindicated me, and he has indeed heard my voice and has given me a son." Therefore she named him Dan. Rachel's maid Bilhah conceived again and bore Jacob a second son. So Rachel said, "With mighty wrestlings I have wrestled with my sister, and I have indeed prevailed." And she named him
Naphtali.
Naphtali. What a name.
Okay, let's pause there for a minute.
The names in the Bible are really screwy.
Yeah,
I know, but
I'll tell you, Jacob must have been one tired guy,
Exactly.
because he's just knocking somebody up left and right. So Rachel says, Jacob was angry with Rachel when she said, "Give me sons or I'll die." And he says, "Am I God? Am I the one who refused you babies?" So the implication here is that the children come from God, that they're a gift from God. And so Rachel gives him the maid. He sleeps with her, and she gets pregnant and gave Jacob another son. Rachel said, "God took my side and vindicated me, because my maid got pregnant and had a boy. He listened to her. He listened to me and gave me a son." She named him Dan, which means vindication. These kids, I'll tell you, graduation must be a real hoot, because there's kind of a family history with all these names. Connect, God heard, vindication. Then Bilhah becomes pregnant again and gave Jacob a second son. And Rachel said, "I've been in an all-out fight with my sister, and I've won." She's still 2 boys short.
But she's still working on it.
So she named him Naphtali, fight. I'm not going to get it right. Fight. They're going to name him Fight.
My Bible says Naphtali sounds like a Hebrew word for wrestling.
Yeah, it would be Fight.
Mm-hmm.
So
I have another little interesting tidbit for verses 1 and 2, where Rachel's lambast getting on Jacob's back. It says, Jacob places the blame on God. While recognizing God's role in this situation, however, Jacob does not pray for Rachel as his father Isaac had done for Rebekah.
it's in God's hand. Now, those first 2 or 3 verses of in chapter 30 are Yahweh or Elohis writing. And then when the maid gets pregnant and has a son, that's Yahwist. And then in verse 7 we go back to Elohis. So there's some intermingling of stories here. And that's why some of it sounds redundant. Let's continue with verse 9.
When Leah saw that she had stopped bearing, she took her maid Zilpah and gave her to Jacob as a wife. Leah's maid Zilpah bore Jacob a son. Then Leah said, "How fortunate." So she named him Gad.
Which means lucky.
Boy, these girls, every time they turn around, they're having a baby.
And they're having baby boys.
Yes, they are.
I'll tell you, I don't know how Jacob got anything done.
Well, this is probably, but didn't they just go to a woman till they got her pregnant and then they did not have anything to do with her till after the baby was born?
Well,
Did that?
I don't know.
I kind of thought that happened.
I think
back
when
then.
Jacob got these women pregnant, he was resting. He was probably thinking, "Phew, she's pregnant, I don't have to worry about it." So let's continue on with when Leah's maid Zilpah.
Leah's maid Zilpah bore Jacob a second son. Then Leah said, "Happy am I, for women will call me happy." So she named him Asher.
Which means happy.
Now in the days of wheat harvest, Reuben went and found mandrakes in the field and brought them to his mother, Leah. Then Rachel said to Leah, "Please give me some of your son's mandrakes." But she said to her, "It is a small matter for you to take my husband. And would you take my son's mandrakes also?" So Rachel said, "Therefore, he may lie with you tonight in return for your son's mandrakes." When Jacob came in from the field in the evening, then Leah went out to meet him and said, "You must come to me, for I may surely hired you with my son's mandrakes." So he lay with her that night. God gave him heed to Leah, and she conceived and bore Jacob a 5th son. Then Leah said, "God has given me my wages because I gave my maid to my husband." So she named him Issachar. Leah conceived again and bore a 6th son to Jacob. Then Leah said, "God has endowed me with a good gift. Now my husband will dwell with me because I have borne him 6 sons." So she named him Zebulun. Afterwards she bore a daughter and named her Dinah.
So we finally get a daughter with a name.
Finally get a daughter.
With a name.
With a name.
Okay, so she's had 7 kids now.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Okay.
I think Jacob should have taken the George Foreman approach. George Foreman named all of his boys George. So he was interviewed. He died this past week, but he was interviewed, and somebody said, "Why?" He said, "You know, you got that many kids, it's hard to keep all the names straight." So he named them all George. And I tell you, this guy, I don't know how he's going to remember all the birthdays, let alone all the anniversaries. I mean, that was one advantage. I'm sure you found this to be true, Warren. You have one child, it's easy to remember one kid's birthday.
Right.
You don't mix it up with another kid's birthday.
Okay. Then God remembered Rachel, and God gave he to her and opened her womb. So she conceived and bore a son and said, God has taken away my reproach. She named him Joseph, saying, May the Lord give me another son. Now it came about when Rachel had borne Joseph that Jacob said to Laban, Send me away that I may go to my own place and to my own country. Give me my wives and my children for whom I have served you, and let me depart, for you yourself know my service which I have rendered you. But Laban said to him, If now it pleases you, stay with me. I have divined that the Lord has blessed me on your account. He continued, Name me your wages, and I will give it. But he said to him, You yourself know how I have served you, and how your cattle have fared with me. For you have had little because before I came, and it has increased to a multitude. And the Lord has blessed you wherever I turn, but now when shall I provide for my own household also? So he said, What shall I give you? And Jacob said, You shall not give me anything. If you will do this one thing for me, I will again pasture and keep your flock. Let me pass through your entire flock today, removing from there every speckled and spotted sheep, and every black one among the lambs, and the spotted and the speckled among the goats, and such shall be my wages. So my honesty will answer for me later when you come concerning my wages. Everyone that is not speckled and spotted among the goats, and black among the lambs, if found with me, will be considered stolen. Laban said, Good, let it be according to your word. So he removed on that day the striped and spotted male goats, and all the speckled and spotted female goats, every one with white in it, and all the black ones among the sheep, and gave them into the care of his sons. And he put a distance of 3 days' journey between himself and Jacob. And Jacob fed the rest of Laban's flocks. Then Jacob took fresh rods of polar and almond and plane trees, and peeled white stripes in them, exposing the white which was in the rods. He set the rods which he had peeled in front of the flocks in the gutters, even in the watering troughs. When the flocks came in to drink, and they mated when they came to drink. So the flocks mated by the rods, and the flocks brought forth striped, speckled, and spotted. Jacob separated the lambs and made the flocks face toward the striped and all the black in the flocks of Laban, and he put his own herds apart, and did not put them with Laban's flock. Moreover, whenever the stronger of the flock were mating, Jacob would place the rods in the side of the flock in the gutters, so that they might mate by the rods. But when the flock was feeble, he did not put them in. So the feebler were Laban's, and the stronger Jacob's. So the man became exceedingly prosperous, and had a large flock, and female and male servants, and camels and donkeys.
Okay, sounds kind of like Jacob is manipulating.
He is.
He did.
He manipulated so he'd get the best.
Right, and in chapter 31, It starts off by saying, Jacob learned that Laban's sons were talking behind his back. Jacob has used our father's wealth to make himself rich at our father's expense. At the same time, Jacob noticed that Laban had changed towards him and he wasn't treating him the same. So,
We were talking about Jacob and him having all these kids. In verse 16, it says, when Jacob came in from the field in the evening, so he's been working all day.
right.
Then he comes in and does that at night.
Well, that's usually.
He probably couldn't wait to get back to the field the next morning.
But we get a clue to what he was doing all day.
Yeah. So,
Well,
So Jacob asked for all the speckled, and then Laban took all of those away, so there wouldn't be any? Is that what
He-
happened? And then,
no,
No,
he
he
took all the speckled ones and the black ones, and then when they come in to mate, he manipulated it some way with rods and stuff so that
that's what Jacob did, but didn't Laban take them all away so Jacob couldn't have any
well,
speckled ones?
he took,
He separated them, but it doesn't say he took them.
Oh,
but I think
So
that
they
what
were-
happened is genetically some of them still came back speckled.
yeah, and every time they get speckled, Jacob got them.
yeah.
Charles was.
You got, my son was telling me about something he read somewhere. Is with the sheep, the owners of the sheep or owner of the flock, that they wanted all white sheep, not the black ones, because the white wool brought more money.
Right.
You know, I know this is jumping ahead, but turn to chapter 35 in Genesis. If we need a way to keep all this straight, verse 22.
While Israel lived in that land, Reuben went and lay with his father's concubine, and Israel heard of it.
Well, it's, yeah, but keep reading.
Now the sons of Jacob were 12. The
Okay.
sons of Leah, Reuben, Jacob's firstborn, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, and Zebulun. The sons of Rachel, Joseph and Benjamin. The sons of Bilhah, Rachel's servant, Dan and Naphtali. The sons of Zilpah, Leah's servant, Gad and Asher. These were the sons of Jacob who were born to him in Padan Aram.
So, you know, if trying to keep it all straight, how many sons did he have?
12,
12.
the 12 tribes.
12 tribes. And, but it really is, it's redundant, but if it's confusing in the chapter 30 and 29, trying to keep track of how many kids, it's all laid out for you. And Rachel, remember, Rachel was barren, but all of a sudden,
She had kids.
she had 2. And by Rachel's
They were the
maid,
youngest 2.
Hmm?
They were the youngest 2.
yeah, and the Rachel's maid had Dan and Naphtali, and the sons of Zilpah. Leah's maid, those were 2. Some of these tribes got changed, the names got changed. But Benjamin and Joseph, those were important tribes of Israel. Judah and Levi were also important, but some of these names were changed. But anyway, I thought that was kind of interesting that here you have the names listed out. Okay,
Kind of like summarizing.
yes. Well, and that's probably an Elohist or priestly writer who is saying, you know, rather than giving us all the coming in and going of the earlier chapters, it's making it a little bit clearer to see. And we'll pick up with chapter 31 next week.
Do we know